Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 17 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss critical issues facing government and industry leaders with their secure cloud computing strategies and solutions. With me on today's show are Michael Mestrovich, Acting Chief Information Security Officer, Central Intelligence Agency. Dr. Ed Mays, Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Infrastructure Support Services, U.S. Customs Border and Protection. Brian Conrad, Acting Director, FedRAMP Secure Cloud Division at the Technology Transformation Services, GSA. Nicholas Spiess, Chief Federal Technologist, Snowflake. John Morello, Vice President, Cloud Protection, Palo Alto Networks. And Chris Roberts, Federal Technology Director, Quest Software Public Sector. We're talking secure cloud computing, and who better to start us off than Mike? We had C2S, and we have C2E. Give us a state of the state. A lot of moving parts over there. Big job for a Chief Information Security Officer.
Sure, thanks. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So, obviously, Luke, as you know, had a long history with cloud computing at the agency, specifically primarily focused on Amazon and infrastructure services. And we made great progress in transition to cloud in that space. C2E opens up the aperture much greater, multi-cloud providers offering everything from infrastructure services all the way through up to software services. And so it's a much broader, expansive cloud opportunity for us and our partners within the community. As I noted previously, a lot of focus was on your primary infrastructure services, compute, storage, those types of things. But we're really now moving up the stack. And so we're working with software solution providers for software as a service. We can talk a little bit more about that later. But right out of the gate, some of the big challenges that we're working through is, hosted desktop services, taking advantage of things like Office 365 to provision, desktop automation services, email, Office automation suite, so on and so forth. And then to also utilize some of the native cloud service offerings, such as, digital rights management and data loss protection services that are embedded within those cloud offerings. I think there's a lot of great potential with all of those different offerings. I think the challenge for us going forward, I know we'll get into this a little bit later, is understanding the telemetry from a multi-cloud environment, being able to make sense of that so that we have a comprehensive cybersecurity and operations view into that multi-cloud environment. But we're really excited about the opportunity. I think we've got a lot of great service providers and great partners in this space. And so we're anxious to take this to the next level.
A lot of capacity in the stable there. And just to clarify, C2E available to the entire IC, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Dr. Ed Mays, a lot of activity going on over at CBP. You all have been on a cloud journey, continue to go on a cloud journey. Tell us what's happening. Give us a state of the state.
Well, I think the big thing for us right now is zero trust, right? Identity and access management being one of the key pillars, role-based access. We're pushing really hard, using tools like Okta and Zscaler. And we're also looking at a multi-account architecture, which allows us to segment our accounts. So if we have a cyber issue, we can actually limit the blast radius. So, we've been doing a lot of work there. Big push will be for the future, getting out a vehicle, a contract that will allow us to support our cloud growth. Because the thing that we're doing is we plan on being out of the data center, hopefully 2025, 2026. We're not giving up on that. So that's really big for us. The other thing is I think that, we are looking at a cloud services brokerage. We've got a cloud center of excellence. And, to be able to manage all the services for cloud, providing business case analysis, architecture, all those kinds of things to our customer base. So we're going to go from, I think, minimal services to what I'll call a full service organization where our app developers can just come in a la carte and choose what they want. But, under governance and with an organization that can help them, get the best for their dollar. Right. We've gone through this a lot, and there's lots of services in places like Amazon, but you've got to really be smart about how you use those services. So that's going to be our big focus.
Right. Put some structure in place, a la carte ordering, and some guardrails around it. I'm sure a lot of lessons learned you can pull from Mike and crew out of the IC. Brian, you all have been on a tear over there. It seems like there's a hockey puck of activity happening, which is awesome. The community loves it. Tell us about where you are with the FedRAMP capabilities.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today. So FedRAMP continues to play that critical role, that nexus between agencies who are moving to the cloud and the cloud service providers who are innovating with this great technology. And since FedRAMP's establishment 10 years ago, the program has, as you mentioned, has seen steady growth. And it's through this partnership with agencies and cloud service providers that we've been able to authorize over 250 cloud services available in the FedRAMP marketplace. And those 250 cloud services have been reused over 3,800 times to date. And so as demand grows, the program, my challenge is the program's got to scale. Because as you mentioned, it's not slowing down. It's things are moving faster. There's a rush to the cloud. And again, the critical role that FedRAMP plays is to ensure that the agencies have secure cloud services to use. And so we have some really exciting things going on, some plans for automation of not only how we handle packages, but our internal business processes. We're going to continue to grow the marketplace to make sure the agencies have secure cloud services to use and also keep up with our communication and our stakeholder outreach.
Yeah, being an early JAB member, it was tough sledding in the beginning there, and it's great to see you go from 24 months to 12 months to 6 months, and maybe I'll try to pin you down on where the goal is there as far as we're going to see, FedRAMP capability in a month or 6 weeks. I won't hold you to that. Let me get Nicholas on here. It's interesting when I think about Amazon. Amazon doesn't happen unless there's an entire infrastructure of internet capability out there just sort of dropped on top of it, enabled a new business. I sort of see Snowflake with the same thing, right? They kind of came in, assumed cloud. Here we go. Tell us what's happening with Snowflake, Nicholas.
Yeah, thanks very much, Luke. Great to see you as always. And hello, panelists and folks at home. I like Mike's comment, so I'm going to bring it back again. We're moving up the stack, and I'm happy to say in cloud there finally is a stack. It's not just somebody else's computer running a bunch of VMs for you. We have software as a service offerings now. We have these very vast cloud computing resources that we can call on, and it enables products like Snowflake to be built and brought to market to enable high-level services, better data flow, better data-driven decisions. And better data coordination and collaboration, which every time I get on this show, Luke, I talk about nonstop. So if you're playing bingo at home, that's the first word. But it really is critical to the success of every agency and the government in general, being able to collaborate on data, being able to leverage massive cloud computing resources. Without that, we couldn't do any of the artificial intelligence or machine learning workloads that every government agency is starting to dial into now. So it's a very exciting time to be in cloud computing.
Right. And, just the ability for an organization like yours to take advantage of this capability and make it available to the decision makers is fantastic. John, we can't do any of this unless we secure it, we enable it. Enter Palo Alto. Tell us what's happening.
I mean, a lot of the themes that have been brought up already are really what guides our view of doing cloud security, most notably the necessity of doing it in a heterogeneous manner. So it's not tied to just a single cloud provider. I think Brian was mentioning that they're seeing more agencies and more organizations that are adopting multiple different clouds. So just as you want to have FedRAMP in all the places that you're going, you need to have security tooling that gives you that visibility across all those physical locations and physical providers that offer these services. And then to Nicholas's point, as that cloud stack progresses up from just being infrastructure as service, you also need to have those capabilities throughout the application stack. So not just looking at the configuration of the virtual machine, but looking at everything from like the S3 buckets that surround it and load balancers that are there, and looking at it throughout the entire lifecycle, not just the asset after it's been deployed, but how do you, as the term often used, shift left and look at those things prior to deployment when that asset just exists as a code artifact, as like a Terraform template or a CloudFormation template prior to being actually created in the cloud provider. And so our view really is to give you that breadth of capabilities across all the different clouds that you use, up and down the stack of technologies, and throughout the life cycle of those applications.
Right. It is an enabling capability with multi-cloud, et cetera. very complex capability as well, big attack surface, et cetera. You need a lot of tools and technology to pull this all together. Chris, enter Quest Public Software or public sector software. Tell us how you're snapping into all this and enabling this fantastic capability to happen.
And sure. One of the beautiful things about cloud is that it gives us capabilities that normally in the legacy fashion were very difficult to pull off. So now we can do things at scale at the push of a button. That's good and bad, both from a service delivery, but also a consumption and cost model. But honestly, that at scale is very important. We looked at it two ways, and that is first, there's getting there and then staying there. Getting there is the lift. We used to call it lift and shift, re-platform. But honestly, once we got there, we realized that we can now do things at scale from a data perspective. So at Quest, for instance, we made a lot of investments around governance. So Zero Trust addressed a lot of security issues we had, both on-prem, moving into the cloud, identity management. Those are the building blocks. But then we started looking, well, how are you actually going to do governance, not just from identity, but also for data? We've now moved data sets that were usually enclosed, very well formatted, understood databases on-prem into the cloud. We've seen what can happen when you don't secure a bucket properly, for instance. We've seen what can happen when the right privilege or the wrong privilege is assigned to an end user who shouldn't have access to specific data points, for instance. So think of all the internal data that really is significant for a citizen, for an agency, and how that data can be misused. So governance is critical for us. So part of governance is not just the identity, but it's the identification of that data. What does a data pipeline look like, for instance? Which applications should be able to access that data? Do the service principles being used by that application to pull in and push data across that pipeline, do they have the right privilege? So we focus on governance, both on the identity side as well as the data side. And we do a lot of blocking, tackling under the surface, so like the duck in the water, so to speak. But the important thing, I think, for agencies, for everyone in this conversation this morning or listening to this, is that if you haven't considered the governance equation as you're moving to the cloud, you're asking for issues. And all you have to do is do a quick Google search on unsecured data in the cloud or buckets, and you'll be surprised what you actually find. So we've made tremendous investments there, and we continually work with our partners in the federal space to actually get them more secure.
Governance very key, and sort of that push button service, interesting, very inviting, but then the bill comes. Ed, you talked about this a little bit. I'm going to come back up to you to give us a specific example of, you all are on this journey. You've gotten a lot of lessons learned internally. You're also hearing from various agencies about how you're going to roll forward. You mentioned Zero Trust as well. Give us an example of a specific program you'd like to highlight.
Well, one of the key things I'll tell you, first of all, just want to say for Chris Roberts, we just pushed out our data strategy for the cloud. And you're absolutely right. It's imperative that we understand our data and that we secure our data. So we're focused on that as well. One of the big programs that we've got that I think is really important is non-person entity comms, right? Either machine to machine or machine to software communications. That's big for us because you really want to make sure that those machines actually can authenticate, verify that it's an actual organizational entity that it's communicating with. That's been pretty important to us, and it's really I think grown across not only just CBP but also in DHS. It's a big program. And I think it's really providing a lot of return on investment. I don't have to guess anymore. I know when, what those certificates are, who they belong to, when they expire, and if something weird is happening, that's unauthorized. So non-person entity certificates are pretty important to us. And also, I'm not sure how many of you have experienced, certificates expiring, but that's just one of those, that can just ruin your day, especially if you've got a mission critical environment. So actually having, machine learning tell you what's happening in your environment and preventing all those things from occurring is a game changer for us. So NPE, and we are using, I think, Venafi for that, and it's been huge. When I first came to CBP, probably circa 2016, 2017, we had outages, I would say weekly, because of this, because it we're just so voluminous, right? Over 100,000 endpoints, plus network, plus. And, this has made our lives a lot better and a lot more controlled and secure.
Right, and obviously operating machine to machine, so it's real time, and a lot of cargo coming across the border, a lot of passengers coming into the country, automobiles, et cetera. You all are definitely working in real time. John, how about at Palo Alto Networks? You know, you're in a unique situation where you're obviously striped across the entire federal sector, state and local, but the private sector as well. Give us an example of a program you'd like to highlight.
Well, I mean, we've been proud to be part of a lot of different programs across the federal government, even prior to the time that we sold our company, Twistlock, to Palo Alto Networks. I think that one of the most important things that you can do as a security vendor is to really try to improve the overall level of knowledge and awareness across the community, not just purely from a selling standpoint, but really to genuinely contribute back in a meaningful way. One of the things that I'm most proud of is the work that we did around NIST SP 800-190, which is the container security guide, which ended up becoming the authoritative guidance on container security, which is, containers are really driving a lot of this new innovation that Nicholas and others have mentioned that really sits on top of that infrastructure as service that's been there for a while. We're also very proud to have been part of a number of projects across all sectors in the federal government space. We have well over 100 federal agencies and organizations that are customers across the intelligence community, Department of Defense, civilian, and that's something I'm very proud of. And in fact, and we can reference this publicly because they've spoken about it. We're even part of the F-35 program and part of the critical supply chain elements there that utilize cloud technologies to ensure that aircraft can be serviced and be put to use globally, and to be able to keep that supply chain, which is very complex and sources many different, really high-end components, keep that supply chain running regardless of the deployment location. So, for us, we see that contribution in terms of knowledge as being really important, but also just being really proud to support the various federal customers that that have trusted us to help them secure their cloud environments.
Fantastic, and a very important part of this ecosystem. Mike, we jumped right in with C2E, C2S. Didn't really explain, or what is that, so the audience knows exactly what that is, and then give us an example of a program you'd like to highlight.
Sure. Thanks, Luke. So C2S obviously was the first foray by the community into cloud computing, and that was specifically a contract vehicle with Amazon to provide infrastructure, compute, and storage services to the community. And so that was C2S. C2E has built on that foundation, and C2E is a multi-cloud environment with multiple players to include Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, IBM as well. And so now you have a multi-cloud environment coming in. Obviously, the benefit of that to the consumer is that there are various different service offerings that can be layered on any one or all of those various different cloud service providers. And you obviously, as a consumer, can then pick and choose which cloud service provider and their associated third-party solution providers maybe best fits your specific mission needs. So it gives a much broader aperture to the consumers to pick cloud hosting services and their ecosystems of service providers that can best suit their particular mission. I'm going to kind of switch gears on you because I think it's worth highlighting it. And since I was there, I think I can claim a little bit of credit for this activity. But when I was down at the State Department and COVID hit, let me back up. I think a lot of the advantages of cloud were obviously highlighted by that traditional storage and compute that any organization had online 365 days out of the year. That was only used at a specific period. And so the classic case that's cited in the government workforce, right, is it's eval season and everybody's hitting the servers to do their performance evaluations. And that's kind of, the September timeframe. But historically, you would have that compute and storage online the other 11 months, and it wasn't really being used. Obviously, cloud changed that paradigm. We were able to spin up cloud services to fully support those types of seasonal activities. And that reduced, obviously, the total operating costs and allowed cloud services to expand out as the mission needs dictated. So that was some years ago, and I think we're well founded in that. But when I was at the State Department and COVID kicked off, we needed to do a whole series of application developments to support, repatriating Americans that were stranded overseas, getting aircraft to get those individuals, getting vaccines out to various different embassies and posts. And the applications to track all of that and do all that categorically didn't exist. And it was only through cloud services and cloud solution providers, and specifically software as a service application providers, that we were able to iterate and deliver, a series of, over a dozen application services within the span of like 6 or 8 weeks, and then continuously iterate on those in kind of in a DevOps agile environment. I think that's, as we look to cloud next gen and C2E, that's the next promise, right? Is beyond the infrastructure services of scaling out for compute and storage and getting into rapid application development that really supports the pace of the mission, and getting into an agile development cycle that allows us to continuously iterate on solutions, put those solutions in front of consumers, have them continuously provide updated requirements back to the application team, and continuously develop those in a rapid cycle. I think that's the next step for us, and I think that holds tremendous advantage.
Really moving up the value chain. So I really do appreciate that. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.